This is not just the story of a weapon. This is the story of how one discovery changed everything. Stay with me, because this journey is one you will not forget. Long ago, before guns existed, people fought with swords, arrows, and spears. War was slow. It was close. You could see the face of your enemy. But one day, in a land far to the east, something changed. It happened in China more than 1,000 years ago. A group of men were working with fire and chemicals. They were not soldiers. They were not kings. They were scientists searching for something else entirely. They were looking for a way to live forever. But instead of finding the secret to long life, they found something very different. They mixed together 3 simple things: charcoal, sulfur, and a white powder called saltpeter. And when fire touched this mixture, it did not burn slowly. It exploded. It made a sound so loud, so sudden, so surprising that the men stepped back in fear. They called this mixture huo yao, which means fire medicine. They did not know it yet, but this small discovery would change the world forever. It would change how people fought, how countries were built, and how history was written. It started as an accident. It started as a search for something good. But the story of what happened next is one of the most powerful and complicated journeys in all of human history. And the question is simple. What do you do when you discover something that cannot be stopped? For many years, the Chinese used this fire powder for celebration. They filled small paper tubes with the powder and lit them. The tubes flew into the sky and burst with color and sound. People were happy. People were amazed. But slowly, quietly, soldiers began to ask a different question. Not, how can this make us happy? But how can this help us win? The first weapons using gunpowder were simple and strange. Soldiers filled bamboo tubes with the powder and used them to shoot fire at enemies. These early weapons were called fire lances. They were dangerous, yes, but they were also unpredictable. Sometimes the fire went in the wrong direction. Sometimes the bamboo broke. But soldiers kept trying. They kept experimenting, because they understood something important. Whoever controlled this power controlled the battle. And so, slowly, over many decades, the weapons changed. The bamboo became metal. The fire became a ball of iron. And the fire lance became something new, something more precise, something more deadly. The gun was beginning to take shape. And once it did, it would not stay in China for long. Ideas, like fire, have a way of spreading. And this idea was about to travel across the entire world. Gunpowder did not stay in China. It traveled along the Great Silk Road, through deserts and mountains and ancient cities. This secret moved from hand to hand, from land to land. Arab traders learned about it first. They studied it, tested it, and wrote about it in their books. They called it by different names, but they understood its power. And from the Arab world, the knowledge moved again. It moved into Europe, arriving sometime in the 13th century. At first, European soldiers did not know what to do with this strange powder. They had their own weapons. They had their castles, their knights, their heavy armor. But some men were curious. Some men were brave enough to experiment. And one of those men was a monk named Roger Bacon. He wrote about gunpowder in his books, carefully and quietly, as if he was afraid of what he had discovered. He described how to make it, how to use it, and how dangerous it was. But his words could not be kept secret. Other people read them. Other people experimented. And soon, across Europe, a new kind of weapon began to appear. It was called the cannon. It was large, it was heavy, and it was terrifying. When a cannon fired, the sound could be heard from many miles away. Walls that had protected cities for hundreds of years began to fall. The world of war was changing, and nothing would ever be the same. The cannon was not a small weapon. It was enormous. It required many men to move it and to fire it. But its power was unlike anything the world had ever seen. In 1453, one of the most famous moments in history took place. The city of Constantinople, one of the greatest cities in the world, had strong walls that had protected it for over 1,000 years. These walls were tall, thick, and powerful. Many armies had tried to break through them and failed. But then came the cannons. A young sultan named Mehmed II brought enormous cannons to the walls of Constantinople. These cannons fired day after day, hour after hour. The sound was like thunder. The ground shook. And slowly, those 1,000-year-old walls began to crack. They began to fall. And when they fell, the city fell with them. This moment showed the entire world something very clear. Walls could not protect you anymore. Stone could not stop metal and fire. The old way of war was over. And this was not just about one city or one battle. This was a message to every king, every soldier, and every nation on earth. The future of power was in gunpowder. The future of war was in the gun. As cannons grew more powerful, soldiers began to ask another question. Can we make something smaller? Something one man can carry, something one man can use alone. And so, over many years of trying and failing and trying again, the first handheld guns appeared. These early guns were simple. They were just a metal tube, closed at one end, open at the other. The soldier put gunpowder inside, then a small metal ball, then used fire to make it shoot. It was slow. It was difficult. In the rain, it often did not work at all. But it worked enough. And that was enough to change everything. Armies across Europe began to replace their archers and their spearmen with soldiers carrying these new weapons. The knight in heavy armor, who had been the most powerful fighter on the battlefield for hundreds of years, suddenly became less important. A young soldier with little training could now defeat a knight with years of experience. This was a quiet revolution, a revolution not of kings or ideas, but of metal and fire. And with every passing year, the guns became better. They became faster. They became more accurate. The journey from that first explosion in China had traveled a long and winding road, and it was far from over. With guns in their hands, European nations began to look beyond their own borders. They built ships. They loaded those ships with cannons and soldiers, and they sailed to parts of the world they had never seen before. When they arrived in Africa, in the Americas, In Asia, they did not come with equal hands. They came with guns, and the people they met often did not have them. The result was devastating. Great empires that had existed for thousands of years fell in months. The Aztec Empire in Mexico, the Inca Empire in South America, powerful kingdoms in Africa, all of them faced armies with guns and cannons. The battles were often not battles at all. They were destructions. This is one of the darkest chapters in the story of guns, because the gun did not only change war between equal armies, it created a terrible imbalance of power across the entire world. Nations that had guns could conquer nations that did not, and they did. For hundreds of years, this imbalance shaped the world. It drew borders that still exist today. It moved people, destroyed cultures, and changed the course of millions of lives. The gun was not just a weapon anymore. It had become an instrument of history itself. Centuries passed, and then, in the 1800s, the world changed again. Factories appeared. Machines began to build things faster than any human hand could, and guns changed with them. Before this time, every gun was made by hand, slowly and carefully by a skilled craftsman. Each gun was slightly different. But now, machines could make hundreds of guns that were exactly the same. Guns became cheaper, guns became easier to buy, and new inventions made them faster and more powerful. A man named Samuel Colt invented the revolver, a gun that could shoot 6 times without reloading. This changed everything. Before, a soldier had to stop after one shot to reload. Now, he could shoot again and again without stopping. And the bullets themselves changed too. They became smaller, faster, and more precise. Rifles, which had long barrels to make bullets fly straight, became the standard weapon of every army. And then came something even more frightening. The machine gun. A weapon that could fire hundreds of bullets in a single minute. When the machine gun appeared on the battlefields of World War I, it killed men so quickly and in such large numbers that generals did not know how to respond. The old ways of fighting were gone, and in their place was something terrible and new. The 20th century brought the gun to its most destructive moment. In World War I, between 1914 and 1918, millions of soldiers sat in long trenches dug into the earth. They sat and they waited,